The trading floor exploded with chaos as alarms shrieked and screens glowed red, showing the company's plummeting stock. James Thornton said, "This can't be happening." His voice cracked as headlines streamed across digital walls, accusing him of fraud and deception. Employees whispered, phones rang without pause, and board members vanished into closed rooms. The air smelled of panic and betrayal, thicker with every heartbeat. Claire Mitchell stepped forward, her face pale but steady, whispering, "James, you must act fast or everything is lost." The room swirled with noise, voices colliding into confusion, leaving James frozen under 1,000 glaring eyes. The city outside seemed to tremble with the revelation, and for James, trust evaporated instantly. He clenched his fists, feeling the world tilt against him, while the foundations of his empire cracked in real time. James staggered into his private office, walls of glass offering no shelter from the eyes outside. His breath came shallow as he muttered, "They've already judged me before I can speak." The skyline loomed, clouds rolling heavy and dark. He slammed the blinds shut, the metallic clatter echoing through silence. For the first time in years, the polished confidence that defined him cracked. His reflection in the glass desk showed a man cornered, hollowed by betrayal. Claire's words repeated in his head like a curse, "Act fast or lose everything." He dropped into the leather chair, gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles whitened. The world demanded an answer, yet his mind spun like a broken compass. He whispered, "I won't let them destroy me," but his voice lacked the certainty it once carried. Claire entered without knocking, her heels sharp against the polished floor. She said, "James, I've seen reports. This is worse than it looks." He didn't rise, only stared at the skyline. She placed a folder on the desk, her hands steady, though her eyes betrayed fear. Inside were documents suggesting deliberate sabotage, numbers twisted, reports falsified. James muttered, "Someone planted this." His tone carried rage beneath despair. Claire leaned closer, whispering, "We must find who before the board buries you alive." The words struck like blades, loyalty laced with urgency. James looked up at her, eyes hollow but fierce, and said, "Then help me fight." The room pulsed with tension, silence heavy as storm winds rattled the glass. In a distant skyscraper, Victor Kane watched news feeds with cold satisfaction. The rival CEO, tall and lean, leaned back in his leather chair, glass of bourbon untouched at his side. He said, "The storm has started, and Thornton won't survive it." His office, sleek and minimalist, reflected his precision. Assistants rushed in with updates, and Victor waved them off with a flick of his hand. His phone buzzed, showing encrypted messages confirming alliances shifting his way. He smiled faintly, predatory and controlled, savoring the chaos from afar. Outside his window, the city stretched under a steel-gray sky, but inside, Victor radiated calm certainty. He whispered to himself, "Power rewards those who create the storm, not those caught in it." Michael Reynolds paced his modest apartment, television glowing with endless coverage of James' downfall. The loyal confidant clenched his jaw, muttering, "They're crucifying him without proof." He pulled off his tie, tossing it aside, the weariness of years showing in his posture. His phone buzzed with messages urging him to abandon James. Instead, he said aloud, "I won't leave him in this fire alone." His eyes, tired but resolute, locked onto the screen where pundits declared James finished. The hum of the city filtered in through the cracked window, mingling with the static of the broadcast. Michael's loyalty burned steady, even as the world demanded surrender. He whispered, "If they want a fight, then they'll have one." The boardroom air was suffocating, heavy with tension and distrust. James Thornton stood at the head of the long oak table, shoulders squared though his confidence flickered. He said, "You've known me for years, you know my integrity." Yet eyes darted away, avoiding his gaze. Several directors whispered to one another, their pens tapping nervously against polished folders. The screens along the wall still displayed tumbling numbers, each red arrow a reminder of crisis. Claire Mitchell sat near James, face blank but eyes sharp, watching every flicker of emotion. One director finally broke the silence, saying, "James, until this is resolved, your leadership is in question." The words cut deep, and James felt the walls closing in, each ally slipping further from his grasp. When the meeting broke, Claire followed James into the hallway, her heels echoing off marble floors. She said, "I've traced some of the numbers. This isn't incompetence, it's deliberate." James stopped cold, his jaw tightening. He hissed, "Who?" But Claire shook her head, her voice low and sharp. "Not yet. But someone is feeding poison into our reports." James' mind raced, every name on the board now suspect. He gripped the railing of the balcony overlooking the lobby, the city lights beyond flickering like distant threats. Claire stepped closer, whispering, "If we don't find the traitor first, the board will bury you alive." James exhaled hard, the truth burning as bitter as betrayal. Far from the glass offices, Ethan Cole slipped through the dim server room, glow of monitors reflecting across his glasses. The corporate spy, quiet and calculating, inserted a drive into the tower. His fingers danced across keys, extracting files, while the hum of cooling fans cloaked his treachery. He muttered, "They'll never see this coming." Lines of code scrolled across the screen, encrypted packets rushing to unseen hands outside. Sweat glistened on his brow, not from fear, but from the thrill of betrayal. He paused only to glance at his watch before pulling the drive, slipping it into his pocket as if it weighed nothing. Yet, what it carried could destroy James forever. James returned to his office, the weight of suspicion pressing heavier with every step. The skyline outside was streaked in dying orange, clouds glowing faintly as night approached. He muttered, "It's not just a storm, it's war." He paced the length of the glass room, hands in fists, his reflection fractured in every pane. He thought of allies now turned strangers, voices once loyal now plotting. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls, each silence another betrayal. James pressed his palms against the window, staring out at the city that once admired him. He whispered, "They'll never take it all, not while I breathe." But his voice cracked, betraying both fury and fear. Victor Kane raised his glass in a private lounge, the bourbon catching warm lamplight as his allies chuckled around him. He said, "Thornton is cornered, and soon the board will beg for stability." Around the table, investors nodded, their eyes sharp with greed. His phone buzzed with a single encrypted update, and a grin spread across his face. He didn't need to check. It confirmed what he already knew. He leaned back, calm and commanding, while outside the tall windows the storm gathered over the city. He whispered, almost to himself, "Control isn't seized in daylight, it's taken in shadows." His allies clinked glasses, toasting a downfall still in motion. The morning opened with catastrophe as news anchors screamed of plunging markets. James Thornton stood in his office, eyes locked on screens displaying collapsing figures. His heart hammered as he muttered, "They're killing us in plain sight." Phones rang endlessly, while assistants ran through the halls like shadows. Investors pulled out in waves, and the company's value drained like sand through broken glass. James slammed a fist against the desk, rage cutting through fear. The empire he built was unraveling under deliberate sabotage. He whispered, "Someone fed this fire, and I'll find them." His reflection in the screen looked pale, worn, almost a stranger. Outside, the city's skyline pulsed with sirens, as if mocking his fall. Later that afternoon, James was ambushed outside headquarters by a horde of reporters. Microphones thrust forward like weapons, cameras flashing mercilessly. "Did you defraud your shareholders?" one shouted. James raised a hand, voice sharp but cracking. "These accusations are false." Yet the mob pushed harder, questions slicing through the air. His security tried to shield him, but every step forward was met with more chaos. Sweat lined his forehead, and the once commanding CEO looked cornered, stripped of authority. Headlines formed instantly from his faltering tone, splashed across live feeds. James muttered, almost to himself, "They've already written my epitaph." The world, once his audience, had become his executioner. In a quiet suburban study, Richard Hayes, the retired CEO, watched the chaos unfold on television. His weathered hands gripped the armrests of his leather chair. He muttered, "I've seen this before. Ambition always devours its own." Richard's hair was silver, his face marked by years of ruthless boardroom wars. He picked up the phone, dialing James. When the line connected, he said, "James, I warned you. The higher you rise, the sharper the knives." James, exhausted, replied, "I don't need lectures, Richard. I need answers." The old mentor sighed heavily, his voice rough. "Then hear this. Survive the storm or be swallowed whole." Silence stretched, heavier than advice. While James wrestled with betrayal, Anna Brooks, an overlooked analyst, uncovered irregularities buried deep in reports. She sat hunched over her laptop in a cramped cubicle, the glow of spreadsheets reflecting determination in her eyes. She whispered, "Someone left a trail, and I'll find it." Numbers danced across her screen, revealing inconsistencies that hinted at deliberate sabotage. Though just 32 and underestimated by most, Anna's persistence burned stronger than fear. Her hands flew across the keyboard, each discovery another piece of a puzzle. She muttered, "James isn't guilty. Someone is framing him." In that moment, the underdog began to rise from the shadows. Night settled heavy over the city as James stood by the window, staring at neon reflections stretching across the glass. He muttered, "The battle isn't in the markets, it's inside these walls." The betrayal carved deeper than financial loss. It was personal, poisonous. Every name echoed like a possible enemy, every silence a confession. Claire's warning, Richard's caution, Anna's discovery, all circled in his mind like storm winds. He clenched his jaw, fury simmering beneath exhaustion. The empire he built was under siege, but James refused to collapse. He whispered, "If they want war, then war they'll have." His reflection stared back, fractured yet unbroken. The storm of betrayal broke with brutal clarity. James Thornton sat in his office, staring at leaked documents spread across the desk, his pulse thundering in his ears. Each page screamed treachery, signed by the one he trusted most. Claire Mitchell's name appeared again and again, tied to Victor Kane's shadow deals. His hand trembled as he whispered, "Claire, how could you?" Rage scorched through shock, the realization slicing like steel. He remembered her warnings, her urgency, her feigned loyalty. It was all performance. His world had been dismantled by the person closest to him. James slammed his fist down, rattling the glass desk, eyes burning with betrayal that no number could measure. Claire entered quietly, her heels tapping against polished marble, the sound echoing like a death knell. James rose sharply, his glare cutting her like a blade. He shouted, "You sold me out!" She froze, her composure cracking for a heartbeat before she smirked. "It was survival, James," she replied coldly. He stepped forward, jaw clenched, voice trembling with rage. "You were my ally." Claire's voice softened, but only with venom. "I was your ally until you became a liability." Silence weighed heavier than the storm outside, lightning flashing against the glass walls. James whispered, broken but furious, "You'll regret this." Victor Kane wasted no time, calling a press conference in a glittering downtown hotel. Cameras flashed as he strode to the podium, black suit immaculate, confidence radiating. "Thornton's leadership has failed," Victor declared, voice smooth and commanding. "I stand ready to restore stability." His words spread like wildfire, stockholders leaning his way with each syllable. Behind him, screens displayed headlines painting James as reckless and corrupt. Victor paused, smiling faintly as reporters devoured every word. He knew he had cornered his prey. He whispered almost inaudibly, "Checkmate," though the microphone still caught it, amplifying his cruelty for all to hear. Back in his apartment, Michael Reynolds sat hunched at his kitchen table, his tie discarded, head buried in his hands. He had defended James for years, but the storm of betrayal was breaking him down. His phone buzzed with messages urging resignation. He muttered, "They want me to abandon him." His weary eyes lifted to the TV screen where Victor's press conference played, Claire standing at his side. The betrayal was complete. Michael's voice cracked as he whispered, "They're all against him now." His loyalty warred with exhaustion, and for the first time, he doubted whether standing by James would cost him everything he had left. In the chaos, Anna Brooks burst into James' office with a folder clutched tight to her chest. "I found it," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. James turned, his face worn but his eyes ignited by her words. She spread the papers across the desk, revealing proof of forged numbers and backdoor deals linking Claire to Victor. "This is the trail," Anna whispered, breathless. James leaned over the documents, his fury sharpening into focus. For the first time in days, he saw a sliver of hope hidden within betrayal. He looked at Anna, determination lighting his voice. "You just gave me a weapon." The next morning, James Thornton stepped into the media spotlight with a fire he hadn't shown in weeks. Cameras flashed and he declared, "The truth has been twisted, but I will set it straight." His voice carried steel, sharp enough to cut through the noise. Reporters leaned forward, sensing a shift in his stance. He unveiled fragments of the forged data Anna Brooks uncovered, enough to spark doubt in Victor Kane's narrative. Gasps rippled through the crowd as James added, "This is not collapse, it's sabotage." For the first time, the story tilted back toward him. Rage and determination fused as he stared into the lenses, daring anyone to bury him alive again. Anna Brooks worked tirelessly through the night, her cubicle littered with half-empty coffee cups and highlighted spreadsheets. Her fingers blurred across the keyboard as she whispered, "Every lie leaves a trail." She found inconsistencies hidden in encrypted files, proof of Victor's collusion with Claire. Exhaustion clung to her eyes, yet determination blazed brighter. She muttered, "They underestimated me." With every keystroke, she unearthed another weapon for James to use. The quiet hum of the office felt like a battlefield in disguise, each document another blow struck in silence. Anna knew she was gambling her career, but the truth demanded sacrifice. In a dim penthouse suite, William Cross, the shadow investor, finally stepped into the light. His tailored gray suit glimmered under warm chandelier glow as he said to his advisors, "The chaos benefits me." At 60, his calm carried weight that silenced the room. He reviewed encrypted files delivered from Ethan Cole, his smirk barely contained. "Control isn't about loyalty, it's about leverage," William added. Every gesture radiated cold precision, as he considered whether James or Victor would better serve his empire. His fingers tapped the polished table, each rhythm like a gavel striking. For the first time, the unseen hand began pulling visible strings. The shareholder meeting erupted with tension as Victor Kane presented his takeover bid. Suits filled the grand hall, whispers rising like storm winds. James Thornton walked in, flanked by Michael Reynolds, his eyes blazing with resolve. Murmurs cut into silence as he strode to the front. Victor smirked, saying, "You're finished." James fired back, "Not while I breathe." Documents slammed onto the table, exposing Victor's backdoor dealings with Claire. Gasps and murmurs rattled the chamber. For a moment, the tide shifted, the crowd swaying with doubt. James's gamble had teeth, and Victor's calm facade cracked under the sudden light of truth. The battle reached its peak as James revealed the final piece of evidence. His voice thundered, "This is not leadership, it's treachery." The room roared with shock, shareholders on edge. Victor Kane lunged forward, voice rising, "You can't prove it," but his calm was gone, rage cracking his mask. William Cross, silent in the back row, leaned forward with predatory interest. Anna Brooks entered late, her folder raised high, and declared, "I have proof." All eyes turned as she handed James the files, sealing Victor's collapse. For the first time, James felt momentum shift fully to his side. He whispered to himself, "Now we fight on my terms." The chamber froze as William Cross rose from the shadows. His calm voice carried more weight than the chaos of James' revelations. "I have reviewed both sides," he declared, every shareholder leaning forward. James' heart sank as Cross continued, "I stand with Victor Kane." Gasps broke the silence, the shift devastating. Claire's smile widened at the announcement, triumph radiating in her eyes. James' grip on the podium faltered, the world tilting beneath him. He muttered under his breath, the game was fixed from the start. Cross folded his arms, a kingmaker sealing fate, and the board swayed instantly. In one cruel moment, hope slipped through James' fingers like smoke. By afternoon, half the company was gone. Reports confirmed shareholders had defected in droves. James sat in his office, head buried in his hands as the skyline outside blurred in evening rain. He whispered, "Everything I built, slipping away." Michael Reynolds entered, soaked from the storm, voice heavy with sorrow. "They've chosen Kane." James lifted his head slowly, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. "Then they've chosen war," he replied, voice low and raw. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the rain hammering the glass. The empire was crumbling, but James' fury sparked a final ember of defiance. The betrayal deepened as Claire stepped into the spotlight. In a televised interview, she sat poised in a navy suit, voice dripping with false conviction. James Thornton failed his company, she declared, the cameras amplifying her lies. Clips of documents flashed behind her, twisted fragments of truth crafted into weapons. Reporters nodded, eating every word. Claire's smirk hid the venom of her treachery. Her betrayal now cemented in public record. James watched from his office, fists clenched as the broadcast carved his reputation apart. He muttered, "You were family, Claire," his voice breaking into a whisper of rage and grief. Michael Reynolds stood before the boardroom doors, knowing what loyalty would cost him. Inside, whispers rose of expelling James permanently. Michael entered with defiance burning in his weary eyes. He said, "If you remove him, you remove me." Gasps filled the chamber. Victor leaned back, smirking, while Claire's lips curved in disdain. James watched in silence as his oldest friend laid his career on the line. Michael's voice trembled, but held steady. "I will not abandon him in his darkest hour." The board froze, stunned by the sacrifice. For James, the loyalty was both salvation and heartbreak. Alone again, James stood at his office window as the storm raged outside. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his reflection fractured across the glass. His empire was crumbling, his allies scattered, and his name poisoned. Yet he whispered with unshakable resolve, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning." His fists tightened, rage boiling into strategy. Every betrayal carved him sharper, forging desperation into steel. Anna Brooks' discoveries, Michael's loyalty, Richard's warnings, all fused into a final weapon. James turned from the window, his silhouette framed against lightning, prepared for one last, desperate gambit. The war was not over. It was only shifting. The boardroom thundered with tension as James Thornton entered for the last time. Every shareholder's eyes locked on him, waiting to see if he was finished. Victor Kane leaned back in his chair, smirking as if the battle was already won. James carried a single folder, his steps slow but deliberate. He said, "Tonight, you'll see the truth." Silence consumed the room, broken only by the storm outside, rattling the glass walls. Michael Reynolds stood at the back, his loyalty etched into every line of his face. Anna Brooks slipped in quietly, clutching her laptop. The stage was set for the final reckoning, a confrontation that would define everything. Victor rose to his feet, spreading his arms wide like a conquering king. He said, "This company needs stability, not scandal." Applause rippled through his allies, their voices swelling with approval. He turned toward James with venom in his smile. "Aye? You are finished, Thornton," he declared. James didn't flinch, his silence heavier than words. Victor leaned closer, his voice low but dripping with triumph. "I'll bury your legacy, and they'll forget your name." The shareholders murmured, swayed by his performance. For a fleeting moment, it seemed Victor had already won. But James' eyes gleamed, not with defeat, but with calculation. James stood slowly, unfolding the final piece of his gambit. His voice cut through the room, sharp and steady. Victor and Claire orchestrated this sabotage. Gasps echoed as Anna Brooks stepped forward, projecting files onto the screen. Rows of data exposed encrypted transactions, linking Victor to secret accounts. Claire's face drained of color, her composure cracking for the first time. James pointed at the evidence, his voice burning with fury. "This is your corruption, not mine." The chamber erupted into chaos as investors shouted, some turning on Victor instantly. For the first time, the predator was cornered. Victor lunged forward, his mask shattering as rage consumed him. "Lies!" he shouted, slamming his fist on the polished table. But his outburst only deepened the cracks in his facade. Shareholders recoiled, whispers rising like wildfire. William Cross watched silently, his calculating eyes narrowing as he realized Victor's grip was slipping. James remained composed, his voice cutting like a blade. "The storm you created has swallowed you." Victor's face twisted with desperation, sweat glistening under the harsh lights. For the first time, the predator looked powerless, exposed before the empire he sought to steal. When the storm cleared, James stood alone at the head of the table. Victor was escorted out, his empire shattered, Claire silent in her disgrace. The shareholders remained hushed, the weight of betrayal sinking in. James whispered to himself, "Victory never comes without cost." Michael Reynolds met his gaze, pride and sorrow mingled in his eyes. Anna Brooks smiled faintly, but exhaustion shadowed her face. The storm outside eased into silence, but the quiet felt heavier than thunder. James turned toward the window, watching the city lights burn against the night. He had won, but the ashes of ambition clung to him forever.